the kid who learned to wield a lightsaber and the Force. But that's only the surface. Ezra's journey isn't just about becoming a Jedi, it's about surviving in the cracks between chaos and order, between hope and despair. His path is the blueprint for how you navigate a galaxy that doesn't play fair. And in August 2025, when the Star Wars universe is bigger, messier, and more unpredictable than ever, that blueprint matters more than you might realize. This isn't a story about walking the straight path of the light or falling completely into darkness. No, this is about living and thriving in the gray. The moments where the lines blur, the rules break, and the right choice feels impossible. Ezra wasn't handed a destiny. He stole it from the Empire that crushed his home, from the Jedi who had already all but vanished, from the galaxy that said survival meant keeping your head down. He refused. He fought, and sometimes he bent the rules in ways that would make the Jedi Council lose sleep for a decade. From the moment Kanan Jarrus took him in as an apprentice, to the daring rescue missions that rewrote the rules of war, to his final, world-shattering confrontation with Grand Admiral Thrawn, Ezra's life is a masterclass in adaptability, courage, and finding purpose when the odds are stacked against you. And here's the thing most people miss. Ezra's defining power isn't just in the Force, it's in the way he reads a moment, makes a choice, and commits, even when that choice isn't perfect. Because, let's be honest, life, whether in a galaxy far, far away or here in ours, is rarely clean-cut. You're going to face impossible situations. You're going to stand at crossroads where every option has a cost. And when that happens, do you cling to the rules? Or do you adapt like Ezra, finding the path that no one else sees? That's what we're breaking down today. The critical turning points in Ezra Bridger's life. How each choice reshaped his destiny and the fate of the galaxy. And what we can learn from a boy who became something far more than just a Jedi. By the end of this, you might just see him, and maybe yourself, in a completely different light. The spark of a rebellion. Ezra Bridger's story begins not in a Jedi temple, nor on a battlefield, but in the shadowed streets of Lothal City. A boy with sharp eyes, quick fingers, and a quicker tongue. A survivor. He knew every past stormtrooper patrols without being seen. His days were spent scavenging, stealing, and scraping together just enough to make it to the next sunrise. Not out of greed, but out of necessity. In an Empire-controlled world, survival wasn't a smooth exterior, there was a quiet ache. Ezra had no family, no home, no one to trust. That longing for connection would become the ember that one day ignited into something far greater. From street urchin to ghost crew. The moment that changed everything came almost by accident. Ezra's curiosity and maybe a little bit of instinct pulled him into a mission that wasn't his. The ghost crew, led by Harrison Dula, was in the middle of a daring heist against Imperial supplies when Ezra intervened, thinking only of grabbing some food for himself. That single choice sent him tumbling into the lives of people who would become his found family. Hera, the heart of the rebellion. Zeb, the gruff but fiercely loyal warrior. Sabine, the quick-thinking Mandalorian artist. And Kanan Jarrus, the man who would change Ezra's life forever. Ezra didn't know it then, but he had just stepped onto a path that would connect him to the heart of a galaxy-wide fight. First Force flickers. Before Ezra understood the word Jedi, the Force had already been whispering to him. It showed in his uncanny reflexes, his ability to sense danger a second before it happened, the way he could leap farther and move faster than anyone else his age. At first, these were just tricks to him, useful for avoiding stormtroopers or slipping through security gates. But Kanan saw what they really were, signs of something greater. The first time Ezra truly felt the Force, it was raw and overwhelming. He reached out instinctively, pulling an object toward him without touching it. It was clumsy, untrained, and yet undeniably powerful. That moment wasn't just a display of talent, it was the Force itself, answering a boy who didn't yet understand the language it spoke. Kanan's reluctant mentorship. Kanan Jarrus wasn't looking for a Padawan. In truth, he wasn't even sure he still was a Jedi in the way the Order had defined it. The Jedi Code had died with the Republic, and Kanan carried the scars of that loss every day. Training someone new meant reopening wounds he had spent years trying to ignore. But Ezra was different. There was a stubbornness in him, a refusal to back down even when the odds were impossible. Kanan recognized the same fire he had once carried as a boy. Their early lessons were anything but smooth. Ezra resisted authority, questioned every instruction, and pushed back when told what to do. And Kanan, haunted by his own incomplete training, often doubted whether he could guide someone at all. Yet, the galaxy doesn't wait for perfect conditions. In the heat of missions, under blaster fire, and against Imperial forces, teacher and student forged something stronger than either of them expected: trust. Kanan began to see that Ezra's defiance wasn't recklessness. It was the courage to think differently. And Ezra learned that discipline didn't mean losing himself. It meant refining the strengths he already had. A spark ready to ignite. By the time Ezra truly became part of the Ghost crew, his life had transformed. He wasn't just stealing to survive anymore. He was fighting for something bigger than himself. The hunger for family he had carried for years was finally answered, not with blood relatives, but with people who believed in him, pushed him, and stood beside him. This was the spark of a rebellion, not just against the Empire, but against the hopelessness the Empire thrived on. And for Ezra Bridger, it was the first step toward becoming more than just a survivor. It was the first step toward becoming a leader, walking the line, temptation and the dark side. For all his courage and determination, Ezra Bridger was never immune to the shadows. In fact, it was precisely his compassion, his willingness to take risks for others, that made him vulnerable. And the one who saw that weakness most clearly was Maul. Maul's insidious influence. Maul didn't approach Ezra like a conqueror. He approached like a teacher, someone who understood the frustrations of the Jedi way, who offered answers instead of riddles, shortcuts instead of patience. To a boy who had lost so much and carried the burden of protecting his friends, the lure of easy power was intoxicating. Maul promised him the ability to end the Empire's tyranny, to save lives faster, to stop waiting for victories that never came. Ezra told himself he could take what Maul offered without falling, that he could use that power for good. But every lesson from Maul carried the same quiet poison: trust only yourself, ignore the old rules, and act without hesitation. The holocrons they unlocked together weren't just repositories of knowledge, they were gateways. They whispered of destinies, of weapons, of paths, paved not with balance, but with dominance. Confronting Vader and Thrawn, temptation is easy to resist in calm waters. But when the storm hits, that's when the cracks show. Ezra's path forced him into the orbit of two of the Empire's most dangerous figures, Darth Vader and Grand Admiral Thrawn. Pure, relentless to happen against him. Ezra felt the weight of his own inadequacy, the constant whisper that he wasn't strong enough to protect anyone without taking darker measures. Thrawn was different, calculated, patient, always 10 steps ahead. Fighting Thrawn wasn't about raw power. It was about navigating a chessboard where every piece was a life on Lothal. For Ezra, it was an exhausting test of whether cunning alone could win without slipping into the manipulations Maul had taught him. Every encounter was a trial. Hold the line of the Jedi way or bend it just this once to survive. The Loth Wolf whispers. It was on Lothal, his homeworld, that Ezra's connection to the Force took a turn no Jedi textbook could explain. The Loth Wolves, mysterious, massive, and ancient, came to him in visions and dreams. They spoke in riddles, moved between worlds, and carried an energy that felt older than the Republic, older even than the Sith. Through them, Ezra learned that the Force wasn't confined to lightsabers and Jedi councils. It pulsed through every stone, every gust of wind, every living thing. This was a connection neither Maul nor the traditional Jedi could fully claim. But the Loth Wolves didn't give commands. They offered choices. And choices, for someone walking the razor's edge between light and dark,